Hello everyone, welcome to the West Linn Library's End-of-Life Doula 101. My name is Sarah Chesney. I'm an adult services librarian here. This recording is being made possible on YouTube, and those in the audience today can access that immediately after the program. This program is going to last for about an hour. The presentation is going to last about 30 minutes with some additional stories or opportunities for Q&A. At that time, we're actually going to turn off the recording given the sensitive nature of the material. You can always reach out to us if you have further questions. I can pass that information along if you wanted to reach out to the End-of-Life Doulas themselves. This program is part of our Dying Well series. It's running until April 2022. Next month, we have Understanding Palliative and Hospice and Palliative Care with Kaiser Permanente on November 8th from 6 to 7. That will be a virtual program given the late hour. Registration will be available for that soon. And then in January, our parents will actually be returning here to do a visual writing workshop. During that time, participants will learn about the benefits and the simple yet empowering planning tool that helps reduce anxiety for those with life-limiting illness and their loved ones. So check out our website for that upcoming program. So I want to thank you all for being here today on this bright and sunny day. I know that this is a hard topic to deal with, so I want to thank you for taking the time. I want to welcome my friends Deanna and Marianne. Thank you, and take it away.
All right, well, hello everyone. As Sarah said, I'm Deanna and this is Marianne, and we're Evening Star End-of-Life Doula Services. We're really happy to be here today to talk to you about end-of-life doulas and how we can provide support to folks who are dealing with various end-of-life issues. And thanks for your patience with us and our copious notes. We tend to say things differently each time we speak, so we want to make sure we hit all of our points. And we're not on Zoom, so we can't hide our notes from you like we normally have in the last couple of years. So just want to make sure we get it all. So we'll start just by sharing a bit of our personal journeys and what led us to this work. And then we'll talk briefly about the doula role and how it's come to be. And we'll discuss some of our tools and some of the benefits in working with a doula. And then we'll close with time for questions and conversation. So I'll get started. So in 2008, my friend Neil, who was 39 at the time, fell in his bathroom, hit his head on the corner of the sink, and 2 weeks later he died. I didn't know how to process this, and when things throw me like that, I tend to study them. So I began a study of death and dying. And somewhere in the midst of all this reading and studying, I learned about the role of end-of-life doulas, and I was intrigued. So I decided to volunteer with hospice just to see if this was something I could actually do. And I found that it really fed me on a really deep level. And while I was volunteering with hospice, another friend who was 40 at the time died of a brain tumor that he never even knew he had. It was all very sudden. And so I offered my support to his wife and small kids for the next few years. And I really learned a lot during that time. So 2 key things I learned from both of these deaths were, 1, the importance of planning ahead, and 2, that families don't always have a very strong support system, whether it's before, during, or after a death. So I went on to receive my end-of-life doula training in 2015 with a 6-month online program with an organization called Mom Doulary's Death and Mourning Doula Training Program. She also trains birth doulas, hence the term Mom Doulary that she came up with for her business. And that taught me how to support basically any mortal human and their people, no matter what stage of health or illness, and whether they're close to death or just planning ahead. And along with hospice, I've also volunteered with Compassion and Choices and End-of-Life Choices Oregon, and I'm currently enrolled in Deanna Cochran's Cure Doula program, as I have to always be learning. So, Marianne, take it away.
Sure. Hi. Thank you for being here. My name is Marianne, and I did my training at the Conscious Dying Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 2016, and this was about 3 years after witnessing my dad's journey and eventual death from glioblastoma brain cancer. And I unintentionally learned in my training how I intuitively showed up at my dad's bedside in a very doula-like way. I role modeled to my younger sisters on how to just be with him. I provided caregiving respite to my mom. I advocated for every little change I saw to our hospice team. And I kept his room as comforting and peaceful as I possibly could. I also learned what not having an end-of-life plan looks like, because my family's we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, and not have very much else organized. And what that looked like for me was sitting in the funeral parlor showroom with my mom hours after they removed my dad's body from home, and watching my mom be upsold on a whole bunch of stuff we didn't need while she was in that state of numbness. Another big lesson was that even though I work in the medical field and I've got credentials and I help other families rehab through diagnoses like this, I was still the daughter, the child. So I had to really learn how to just watch my family do things their way, even though it was terrifying at times. I also got involved with volunteering with hospice because I was really curious if I could sit for a non-family member at end of life, and because I could be present, I figured I should, because like Deanna said, there's, even with the best intentions, often not a really reliable support system at the critical moments. And so to explain how we met, this is typical of newly, freshly trained doulas as they get out of their training super jazzed, and there's nowhere to plug into the community to do this work you're so excited about. And so we were both guided in our own ways to finding this home funeral guide up in Scappoose. She was kind of like the local go-to. She was being bombarded by people like us, hungry to get started. And what ended up happening was a collaborative was formed of about 12 and 14 end-of-life practitioners of all varieties. We had Reiki, acupuncture, grief counseling, celebrants, 4 doulas, and even a naturopathic gerontologist. So we were really a well-rounded group that did a lot of public education like this for about 1.5 years. It has since disbanded. And what happened was us 4 doulas figured, well, why would we each open our own business and try to get started when we can do this as a group? And even though we're just 2 remaining doulas now, we are still so happy to be out in the public and serving our community.
Thanks, Marianne. So now I'd just like to start with a very brief history, a little background, and a few words about the culture of death and dying in the U.S. Since pretty much forever, death and dying has been a family and community event. You were cared for at home by your family and during your illness, and then after your death, your community built your coffin and helped dig your grave. And in more recent times, your wake was held in your own home, in the parlor. So during the Civil War, though, the practice of embalming was used to help transport the bodies of dead soldiers over distance back to their homes. And even President Lincoln was embalmed and transported by train through 7 states and 180 cities on his way home to Springfield before refrigeration. And while it was said he was looking a little rough throughout the tour, this may have led to further depopulation of embalming after the war. So then embalmers began setting up shop, and thus began the business of moving death into the hands of professionals and out of homes and communities. And then with the development of modern medicine and the medicalization of death, along with the increasing numbers of funeral homes and funeral directors, knowledge of this profound time has really been removed from people's common experience. And we as a culture have become increasingly disconnected from death. So much so that we're even so bold as to deny that it will even happen to us. And even the parlor is now called the living room. So in the 1960s and 70s, the modern day hospice movement, which started in England and came here, I think, in 1974, it began as a way to bring more holistic care back to the end of life and reconnect families with this lost knowledge and this way of supporting each other at end of life. And in the past, 15, 20 years or so, the end-of-life doula movement began as a response to the limitations in care that can still exist even with hospice on board. And I'll also give a quick explanation of hospice for anyone who's not really familiar with what that is. Hospice is a type of healthcare that is provided when a person has a likely prognosis of 6 months or less to live. And the focus is on quality of life, comfort, pain management, and easing of suffering. So while hospice is such an important service, we recognize that some hospice organizations, like so many areas of healthcare today, are a bit stressed. And hospice staff may not have the time to really sit with folks and help with the inner work related to dying. And because death really isn't a medical event. It's a natural process with social, emotional, and spiritual considerations that need addressing just as much, if not even more, than the physical aspects and the physical distress. And when these internal concerns aren't addressed, what we've seen is that this can lead to folks dying with layers of emotional distress and families not receiving the support they need. So doulas support individuals and their families by providing that extra time to process the emotional aspects of their dying, and we support hospice staff by being another available team member when they're not able to spend as much time as they'd like. So we're more sets of eyes and hands, boots on the ground, so to speak. Our culture's disconnect from death as a normal part of life has really set us up for difficult end-of-life experiences. There's a chaplain and educator, Judith Johnson, and she discusses in her book, Making Peace with Death and Dying, the concept of existential maturity, which is defined as a kind of peaceful acceptance of mortality that eases the pain of the impermanent nature of human existence. Doulas help to normalize death and dying and encourage exploration of existential maturity with our clients through education and conversation. And now Marianne will tell you a little bit more about how doulas serve.
Yes. So doula is a Greek word that we use to mean one who serves. And doulas are essentially just members of the community that have had training and or experience in end-of-life care. We're non-medical, and we offer holistic, emotional, and practical support. And according to the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, doulas are at the forefront of social change in America that will have far-reaching, positive impacts for those who are served. And we are so grateful that Nita put out that statement, because we have been referring to ourselves as cultural activists for a little while now in the way that we're supporting the shift in our culture's ideas about death. And we're doing it one client or one family at a time. And speaking of cultural ideas about death, we really just want to acknowledge that not everyone has the same access to healthcare or death care in our country, and not everyone's idea of a good death looks the same. So we will probably say this many times, but we are constantly trying to meet people wherever they are in their journey. And we're happy to refer folks to other more culturally appropriate doulas if that seems to fit their needs better. Like Deanna said, we really focus on normalization of end-of-life language, discussion, conversations, anything. This doesn't have to be a taboo subject. We serve as role models in how to be with illness and death. We bring to light what we call frequently unasked questions, because we often hear, well, I've never died before, I don't know what I don't know. And so we end up doing a lot of providing resources, local resources and information. And we educate on a lot of topics, but things that people don't really have a good knowledge base on, which would be green burial, home funerals, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, medical aid in dying, natural organic reduction or human composting, aquamation, and whatever else is around the corner that we don't know yet. Like Deanna said, we also give information on palliative and hospice services. with sometimes the encouragement to consider enrollment sooner than maybe a family or person would normally do, considering the trend is to call hospice days or weeks before end of life and not really experience the benefit. So yes, so if appropriate, we ask them to consider getting enrolled sooner. We encourage folks to get their legal paperwork done. People may not realize who will be in charge of their health decisions or finances or funerals if they don't have these documents in place. And this can be especially important for folks who might not have good relationships with their families of origin, and for the LGBTQ+ community who really want to ensure the proper upholding of their identities. These documents will allow people to assign these really important roles to people they trust, who know them well, and who will follow their wishes. And while we can't guarantee a perfect outcome, our hope is that by supporting people in getting their planning done as early as possible, that we've got that much more wiggle room should crisis come up along the journey. We have tools that help people prioritize and plan for needs as a diagnosis progresses. And we find that we're a really helpful, neutral third party, because what seems to be the pattern is that families try to protect one another from having those tough conversations or from feeling the pain that's part of this experience. And what we can do is be practice for difficult conversations, and we actually grant a lot of permission when we talk with people to speak their truth, whether that's, I don't want to continue treatment anymore, or if it's, I would like to have my end-of-life party this way, even if it's not what the family would expect or do. So a lot of permission of, you get to do this however you want. And we encourage conversation throughout the process of working with us, and with each approach that we might use with working with a client or family, because we really believe strongly that emotional healing is possible up to the last breath. And truly, so much of this incredible work that we can do starts with conversation. So I don't know if you've received or taken the handout of the timeline when you entered, but that's just a quick reference for you guys so that you understand that just because we're end-of-life doulas, we really want you to know that we can support people along the entire lifespan, pretty much. So we can work with individuals who are young and healthy, maybe new parents or newly married and they want to just get plans in order for the future, to people who are newly diagnosed or already dealing with a serious illness. We can support through active dying and even provide some limited family support after death. And what's cool now that we can work virtually is that we can work with individuals with illness and their family members, caregivers, whatever their circle looks like, but they don't even have to be local. What we've done is worked with a loved one locally who is supporting an ill family member out of state, and we've worked with the person with illness locally while their adult child was living across country. So we get to kind of be that touchstone for either party. And even though Deanna and I are both insured and certified, there is currently no regulation at this point for doulas. The closest thing we have to a regulatory board is that National End-of-Life Doula Alliance that I mentioned, and that is a collaboration of several of the End-of-Life Doula training founders that have come together and really put great language and definition to the scope of this practice, to the role of doula. They identified core competencies and a code of ethics. And they've even created a national credential, certificate of proficiency, so that there's now a set of standards for this new profession.
So a few things that doulas are not are legal advisors, chaplains, counselors, medical providers, social workers, or funeral directors. and we're not physical caregivers. And we understand where our expertise stops, and we refer our clients to other professionals as necessary. And we as Evening Star, since we've been working together since 2016, we've met a lot of folks in the community here locally, so we're a really great resource for other folks who aren't us in the area. And I also wanted to make one note on the resource sheet that we have. One thing I neglected to put on there was the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. So that's a good one to look into for more information on palliative care and hospice care, because they're really important services to be aware of. And then I'll go ahead and let you know some of the benefits of working with a doula. We empower clients and families by sharing information and knowledge that helps them make informed choices based on their values and priorities. And this can lead to them feeling more in control and having an end-of-life experience that's more aligned with who they are. The tools and conversations we engage in with folks really help to reduce the existential and emotional distress around death and dying that's so commonplace in a death-avoiding culture. And this in turn can lead to the reduction of physical symptoms that are caused by this distress, because not all pain at end of life is physical. And by helping folks plan ahead, and this is ideally when folks are healthy or early in a disease process where they have more energy, they're more free to focus on quality of life and spending time with their people as their health declines, rather than having to use the last of their energy scrambling around to make decisions and plans, or leaving their families to make those decisions in the midst of a crisis. A hope we have for families and loved ones is to experience less complicated grief after a death. Families of folks who've done their planning ahead and have had the necessary conversations and openness about the reality of the situation know how to make any needed decisions for the person, and hopefully we'll avoid months or even years of second-guessing how they've handled the situation. We've definitely heard stories of people 10, 20 years later wondering if they made the right choice in that crisis because nothing was set up ahead of time. And we hope to decrease the amount of medical spending and hospitalizations in the last year of life, which is where so much money goes. By helping them process their situation realistically with education and conversation. Again, we're going to say education and conversation a lot, and working to incorporate a little of that existential maturity. And we can help to round out the care team by introducing families to other local resources like chaplains, social workers, counselors, and caregivers. And we can also provide consistency of support. We can be there when a person is healthy, through an early diagnosis, palliative, curative care, then through any progression of illness onto hospice care, and even through active dying. As other care teams change, we can be that common thread through a whole experience. And I will add, I think we've said this before, that most of these benefits are best achieved when we're engaged early in a disease process or even before a disease process. However, that reality hasn't been the norm thus far. And now I'll tell you about some of the tools that we can use with clients. So our foundational skills are deep presence and active listening. And what we've heard from clients is that being heard is really one of the most valuable supports for them, especially dealing with end-of-life issues. It can sometimes be difficult to feel heard in the medical system, and sometimes even one's family can't or won't really listen. Friends and family often don't know how to be in conversation about someone's death and want to offer suggestions or try to help or fix things. Sometimes this comes from a place to help themselves feel better. And don't get us wrong, we don't blame people for this. No one in our society gets a class in school on how to be with death and grief, and we're just trying to change that. But as we've mentioned, we don't come in with an agenda, so we really need to be able to hear what our clients' needs are and what their values are, and from there we provide the information and resources that they need to make their wishes as much of a reality as possible. We meet folks where they are and create a safe space for them to process what they're facing.
And not all our clients use all of our tools. And each case is very different regarding what approach or modality we take in approaching a person. So our work looks different in each case. And some clients might choose to do legacy work. And legacy work, or an emotional will, is the wisdom and emotional and spiritual inheritance that you leave behind. One of the greatest fears that develop for people at end of life is the question, how will I be remembered? A legacy project allows them to leave their knowledge and emotional and spiritual legacy in a concrete format, and that can be as various as there are people, right? There's a million and one things. So we've seen a book, a video, a garden, a photo album, and whatever else rings true for that person. So the options are endless, and that their loved ones, the benefit of the legacy project is that the loved ones can have this item, this concrete thing that they've left behind, to have a growing and changing relationship with their person even after they're gone. And our culture hasn't taught us a great deal about rituals of remembrance, and continued engagement with the legacy project can become just that. So through active listening, we help extract what was really important to this person about their life, what they've learned, and what they want to pass down, right? And it really helps put a sense of control back into the hands of the person with illness. And even if a project hasn't been completed, what did it still do? It might have opened them up to storytelling. It might have opened up a lot of conversations and questions with loved ones that might have been helping them make a project. So truthfully, the goal was met still. That I can remember those conversations I had with Dad while we were doing this. So, and we've seen people, like let's say you have a letter, you can read it as you continue to age and mature, and you might not get the same experience twice. So it really is, it's kind of like a living thing that they're leaving with you. And we'll be doing our legacy work class here on April 1st. Another tool that we use to help our clients get clarity on their goals or prioritize tasks and activities is the vision map for the best 3 months of life. And this is not an advanced directive, but a way to prepare for transition, to experience completion, happiness, and fulfillment in the final weeks and months of life. And it's basically a series of questions and conversation guides to help folks focus on the 5 domains of our lives, which is spiritual, emotional, physical, which can also be like the environment, not just the body, mental, and practical, which can also encompass after-death care. And what we explore through these questions and conversation is a vision of the desired end result that would look or feel best. So what someone's goal for any of those domains is, what they're striving for, and then compared to where they are currently. And in that great big gap between the two, we can start to work out action steps, big or small, so that we can help encourage shifting during this very, precious piece of time that we're working in. And another tool that we actually get requested to use the most is the Vigil Plan, which is a client-directed death care plan for final days. So the Vigil Plan is a document that outlines specific ways a dying person wants to be engaged with once they can't speak for themselves anymore. Again, returning that sense of control back to the ill individual. And it's a flexible document that can be amended at any time that really engages all the senses. It asks of you, what do you find comforting now, or what would you anticipate you would find comforting when you're maybe bedbound or not able to express what you need? What are things that we should have set up for you? And like I said, engages the senses, so we talk about things like music, the aesthetics of the room, how you might want to be touched or not, and maybe what fragrance or aromas you might like that could be soothing. And as a person declines, the plan can be altered if something that was thought to be a good fit just isn't anymore. And this plan is actually a gift to your loved ones that are going to be coming to be with you bedside. Largely because, like we've said, people don't know how to be bedside, and so your loved one has already given you a list of ways that you can be bedside with them. And it's not a list of things to do, it's a list of ways to be that would be both relieving for you to know how to show up and relieving for them because they've been heard, even if they're not speaking anymore. And again, we'll be doing a vigil planning workshop here, and that would be January 7th.
I just thought of one more aspect of a vigil plan is it also is really helpful for the primary caregiver. So it's something that can be posted on the door of the room, so this person doesn't have to tell every single person who comes how to be. It can just be there, and so it gives that person a little downtime in that area as well. And as far as how one would find a doula to work with, well, we're right here. But a lot of folks have found us through a Google search. If people know about end-of-life doulas, they can search end-of-life doula or death doula in the city or area they're looking for. A lot of people find us and they don't know we exist, but they're finding, they're searching "help my dad's dying" or something to that extent. There are various phrases that people search and we come up. And there are also a lot of doula directories by state. NEDA has one, the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, and various other training programs have directories of their doulas as well. And you can also check out Eventbrite or Meetup and search for end-of-life doula and phrases like that, because a lot of us are doing a lot of events through Eventbrite or Meetup, because we're working hard to educate people about our role, for sure. As far as how doulas charge, it varies among practitioners. Some don't charge at all, others are sliding scale. Some have various packages or hourly rates. That's how we work, but we would never turn anyone away for lack of funds. We're always willing. It's more important for us for people to get the service than to get a full price forever. There is currently very limited insurance reimbursement, so our services are private pay. We do have a client that is getting reimbursed by a long-term care plan, and it's possible that like a health savings reimbursement account may reimburse if a doctor writes a note. So some of the challenge there is doctors knowing what we are and what we do. So work in progress there. But yeah, as with that, we just like to open the floor for questions and conversation.